Hey, what's up? It's Bon, and today I want to talk about BioWare, EA, layoffs in the gaming industry, and kind of give maybe a unique take on this that I don't think people are going to love, but it's just kind of how I feel. So, before we get into that, if you like games and hearing about gaming news, especially Mass Effect, BioWare, anything to do with that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. Like this video if you do, and comment down below with what you think, or to just say hello. All of that stuff helps this video get shared. As much as I love people to join as a YouTube member or to buy merch or whatever, the best support you can give someone my size is watching, sharing, liking, and commenting, and subscribing. Let's get into it. So today we found out that EA is going to lay off about 5% of their employees. There was a little bit of confusion at first about who this was going to be. Obviously, in the circles I run in, everyone was scared for BioWare. It seems like BioWare came out unscathed, at least as far as we know right now. It looks like studios like Respawn and basically studios that were working on like licensed mobile games and licensed games in general are probably suffering the most right now. We found out that the first person shooter Mandalorian game that Respawn was working on has been canceled. That's a bummer. That sounded neat. And then it sounds like they're sunsetting and potentially canceling work on a bunch of like licensed, I think I saw like mobile games that are licensed and things like that. It's interesting, the EA situation especially, because they said that, and the multiple people from higher ups in the EA came out and talked about it, and it was funny because they were basically saying like, hey, we're going to back off on licensed games and really focus on our own IPs and so on, while also reiterating that the Black Panther game, which they built a studio just for, is still going. That the Iron Man game, which is EA Motive, which I believe is a former BioWare studio, is still going. And that they're still working on the Jedi Survivor, Jedi, the third game in that trilogy is still happening. So it seems like they are definitely still doing licensed games. They've just decided to not maybe go in on many new ones, is my guess. And there may have been some existing projects. Even that Star Wars game for Respawn, I don't know if that was ever officially announced or discussed. So everyone's upset about that. I get it. A Mandalorian game made by Respawn sounds awesome. But, these things happen to a point. Now with the layoffs, it comes in a week. This year has already been pretty wild with layoffs. Most industries are having trouble here, right? Even the industry I work in, which is kind of the mental health, social work field, is struggling right now. We aren't doing layoffs, at least not in my circle, but we can't find anyone to work. So business in general is still recovering from COVID. I know no one wants to hear about it anymore. I get it. I don't either. But it's true, and the games industry especially was unique in that it flourished during COVID, where many other industries floundered, right? And so they hired up, and people started studios, and they started new projects, and those things didn't work out in the long run, because the problem is a lot of times, especially in that unique situation, it seems like a bunch of smart people got real dumb and figured the ride was never going to end, that the profits were going to keep going up, that things were going to stay the way they were or get worse, therefore making things better for them. But that's not what happened. After a few years, we're starting to recover from COVID. We're starting to move on from it in a lot of ways. And the world's returning. People are leaving their homes again. Not me, but some people are. And it's tough seeing these things happen. We just had PlayStation just laid off a bunch of people, including shutting down their entire London studio, which was working on VR games. I think was their big thing. That was an especially insulting situation because 5 days before they shut down or were shut down, Jim Ryan was there doing some kind of, he may have just been visiting the studio for whatever reason, but it seems like maybe he's going around and checking out studios before he retires, which he announced already. And there's pictures and there's tweets from people who work at that studio being like, hey, like, look at us, like with Jim Ryan, where Jim Ryan, being in the position he's in, knew that studio was shutting down. So, like, I'm not going to judge that man's character. I'm sure it was eating him up inside as well. But man, that's an interesting thing to do. But, like Sony laid off people, and not just that studio. They laid off people from Insomniac. They laid off people from Naughty Dog. They laid off people from the Horizon devs. Like, they laid off people from their best studios. And I don't know if that's because maybe Sony's getting away from that live service thing. It just seems to come down to a lot of, especially in the games industry, everyone got too hot too quick and overhired and overexpanded and just overdid it. And now a few years later, they're realizing like, oh man, like we aren't pulling in enough revenue to justify this 20-30% boost in employees that we got. And they're cutting people. And I guess for me, the struggle I'm having is that, these layoffs are awful and I will always feel bad for the people directly impacted. What I'm starting to get a little sick of is the constant cycle, and it's happening weekly at this point, of journalists and commentators and stuff kind of always doing the same, like, oh, this industry, it gets to the point where they can only be outraged so many times. And like, I know I don't really expect people to like normalize it and not care, but like every time this happens, I saw it today, people be, whoa, I bet Sony CEOs aren't taking pay cuts. Like, that's not why they're doing these layoffs. They aren't doing these layoffs over a couple $1,000,000 or a couple $100,000. They're doing it for much bigger reasons. And it's not playing devil's advocate for the corporations. They don't need anyone to defend them. I just think that sometimes the reactions have, I don't understand business. I don't understand deeply why they're doing these things, but neither does anyone else. And while I mostly keep my mouth shut about it, or just kind of observe and make deductions from that, you see people doing all this stuff, being like, oh, I can't believe they're still making this game. And, they laid those people off and, they're still doing this other thing. And it's like, we don't understand, especially in these gigantic companies, Microsoft, Sony even, none of us really understand what's going on. And the truth is, a lot of them don't either. They're just trying to figure stuff out. And I think it's absolutely fair to demonize the like C-suite people, the suits, the corpos. But I don't think this is always as malicious as everyone makes it out to be. I think these businesses are trying to survive, and really they're trying to thrive, because unfortunately the way our system works, at least for most of us, is that it's not even about whether a company is doing well or not. It's whether it's doing well enough. And that's unforgiving and awful and sucks for humans that are involved in it. I just can't ignore how performative some of the outrage is on this. One example is the thing with Jeff Keighley right now. Everyone's going after him because he hasn't commentated on all of these things, basically, all of this firing stuff, even though he very publicly had beef with Konami over dumping Kojima. On one hand, what's Jeff gonna do, right? On the other hand, I don't know why anyone expects Jeff Keighley to do anything to bite the hand that feeds. That dude's the most corpo, like I still don't understand the people who think that Jeff Keighley is like the everyday gamer's best buddy. That dude is a C-suite, CEO, executive best friend. Like that guy, he's not your buddy, no matter what people think. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but that's moving off the subject. So if you're here to hear about BioWare and stuff like that, maybe I misled you a bit for this video, but I just kind of wanted to get this off my chest. I haven't made many videos lately, and this is something, it's going to keep happening. There's going to be more layoffs this year. I held my breath today for BioWare. It looks like they were safe today. Who knows if they are next time? They even specifically, I think IGN reported that very specifically, EA confirmed that they're still working on Mass Effect pre-production and they're focused on getting Dreadwolf out the door. So if you're a BioWare fan, I think you can feel okay right now, as okay as you can feel, I guess. And I'm forever the optimist. And I forever try to keep an even keel and an even opinion on this stuff, but it just sucks, and that's I feel like that's all I can say. So thanks for listening. Again, if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, comment down below with whatever you think, or to just say hello. You can find me all over the internet as Bond Diesel, including over on Twitch, where I do try to stream a few times a week, a month. We'll see. You can also check out my podcast here on the YouTube channel, as well as on all podcast platforms. It's the Bonfire Podcast and the Mass Effect Hypecast. If you want to support, check out the link down in the description below. Become a YouTube member. All the other things I've talked about. That's all I have for this one. So until next time.